My wife cheated and I accidentally recorded everything. When I confronted her and her lover on the street, the revenge was brutal and the judge left them speechless. I'm 27 years old. I work in it. And 4 months ago, I found out my wife was cheating on me in the most random way you can imagine. Like, it was literally an accident on her part that changed everything. The truth is, I still have a hard time processing how something as simple as a phone call that didn't hang up properly could reveal a whole secret life that I didn't even suspect existed. You know, one of those things you see in movies but never think will happen to you. I met Jessica like 5 years ago. I don't know, maybe 5.5. At a friend's party, a mutual friend. She was fun, sociable, the type of person who lit up the room when she walked in, you know? We got married after 2 years of dating, and at first everything was going well, I guess. I worked at a tech company doing technical support and then moved to development. Nothing glamorous, but it paid the bills. And Jessica had quit her retail job like a year after we got married because she said the stress was killing her and she wanted to focus on the house and maybe start some personal project. I was okay with it, honestly, because I made enough for both of us, and I thought if she was happier that way, then go ahead. Looking back, I should have seen it coming. But you're so caught up in your daily routine that you don't notice the signs until they explode in your face. Things started to change subtly, let's say, about 6 months before everything fell apart. Jessica started going out more often, which in theory was fine because I wanted her to have a social life, but it was always like, I'm going to lunch with a friend, or I'm going to the gym, or I have to do some shopping. And when she got home, she was always in a better mood. Almost too happy, you know what I mean? Like she had some exciting secret. I thought maybe she had started that personal project she mentioned, or that she was just happy to have more independence. Also, her phone became like her most prized possession. She never left it. Lying around like before, she always had it on her or face down, and if it rang when I was nearby, she'd rush to answer and go to another room. When I asked her, she'd say it was her mom or some friend, with drama, and I believed her because, I don't know, why wouldn't I believe my wife? The day everything changed was a normal Tuesday. Absolutely normal. I was at the office. It was like 1 in the afternoon and I was on my lunch break, and I decided to call Jessica to see if she needed me to buy anything on my way home. She answered. I heard her voice saying hello, but she sounded kind of distracted, and I said, Hey babe, do you need me to stop by the supermarket? And she said something like, Oh yeah, wait, but her voice sounded weird, and then I heard a click like she had hung up. What happened next was, I was left with the phone to my ear because I was going to put away my cell phone, but I heard voices, and I realized the call hadn't been disconnected. At first I thought it was a glitch, or that the line had stayed open by mistake. You know, those things that happen. But then I started to clearly hear Jessica's voice, and a man's voice that I didn't recognize. I'm not going to lie. My first instinct was to hang up because I felt like I was invading her privacy, but something in the tone of her voice stopped me. She was laughing, but it wasn't her normal laugh. It was that flirty kind of laugh she used to use with me when we were just starting to date. And the guy was saying something about how good she looked that day, and she was responding with things like, Oh no, you really know how to make me feel special, and this is my favorite place to see each other because nobody knows us here. My heart literally started beating so hard I thought I was going to have an attack. Seriously. I got up from my desk and went to the bathroom because I didn't want my coworkers to see me like that, and I locked myself in a stall with the phone still against my ear, recording. Everything with my other cell phone. You have 2 phones, one personal and one for work, thank God. I stood there like an idiot for 47 minutes. And it's not an exaggeration, it was exactly 47 minutes because I checked the recording time afterwards. I heard everything. I heard how she told this guy, who apparently was named Adam, about how boring her life at home was, how her husband, meaning me, only cared about work and never paid attention to her, which was completely false, but whatever. I heard how he told her she deserved someone who valued her and made her feel alive, and she ate up that garbage with a spoon. I heard how they planned to see each other again on Friday, and how she mentioned that I had a meeting that day that would last until late so they'd have more time. The part that killed me most was when she said, Sometimes I wish I had met someone like you first. My life would be so different. And the guy responded, It's never too late to start over. You just have to. Decide what you want. When they finally hung up and my phone went silent, I sat there in that bathroom for I don't know how much longer, processing what I had just heard. I felt like someone had hit me in the stomach with a baseball bat. My hands were shaking so much I almost dropped the phone. I left the bathroom and went straight to talk to my supervisor, Brandon, who's a good guy, and I like him. I told him I had a family emergency and needed to leave, and he saw my face, and I guess he saw something was very wrong because he just said, "Go, I'll take care of everything. Let me know if you need anything without asking questions." I got in my car, a 2018 Honda Civic, nothing special, and drove straight to the bistro she had mentioned in the conversation, which was downtown like 20 minutes from my office. I didn't have a plan. Honestly, I just knew I needed to see it with my own eyes, because part of me still couldn't believe this was really happening. I arrived and parked where I could, see the entrance, and like 10 minutes later I saw her come out. She was wearing that blue dress I had bought her for her birthday last year, the one that cost me like $200, and she said she loved, and she was walking with a tall guy, well-dressed, in a suit, probably her age or a little older. He had his hand on the small of her back, and she was laughing at something he was saying, and I just stood there paralyzed watching the scene like it was someone else's movie. I don't know what gave me the courage to get out of the car, but I did. I walked straight toward them, just as they were getting to a black Audi that I guess was his. And Jessica saw me in her face. Literally, her face was total panic. She turned white as paper. The guy, Adam, looked at me confused, and I just said, "Hi, Jessica, aren't you going to introduce me to your friend?" My voice came out calmer than I felt inside, which was weird. She started stammering something about him being a friend from work, and I said, "Funny, because I thought you didn't work anymore," and she went quiet. Adam asked, "Who is this?" And I answered, "I'm her husband. Nice to finally meet you." Adam's face changed completely, like from confused to angry in a second. He turned to Jessica and said, "Husband? You told me you were separated and waiting for a divorce." And she started with, "It's complicated. I can explain," but I pulled out my phone and said, "Do you want me to explain, or would you rather I let him listen to the conversation you had with him an hour ago?" Adam looked at me, and then at her, and I played the recording. I just let it play for like a minute, the part where she was saying her husband was boring and never paid attention to her, and Adam raised his hands and said, "You know what? I didn't sign up for this." She told me you were out of her life, and got in his car and left, just like that, which honestly I don't blame him. Jessica immediately changed tactics, started crying and saying she was so sorry, that it had been a terrible mistake, that she didn't know what happened to her, that she loved me and we could get through it. She asked, "Where are we going?" And I said, "Home, to get my things, because this is over." And the whole way there she oscillated between crying, getting angry, blaming me, saying if I had been a better husband she wouldn't have looked for attention elsewhere, and then back to begging. I didn't say anything, just drove, because I knew if I opened my mouth I was going to say things I might regret, or worse, I was going to start crying and I didn't want to give her that satisfaction. When we got to the apartment, the first thing I did was call the credit card company and cancel all the cards where she was an authorized user. Then I called the bank and removed her access to our joint accounts. She realized what I was doing and started screaming that I couldn't do that it was her money too. And I told her, "No, it's my money that I earned working while you were fucking Adam at expensive restaurants," which I know sounded ugly, but it was the truth. I started packing a suitcase with clothes and basic things, and she blocked the bedroom door and said she wasn't going to let me leave, that we had to talk about this like adults. I told her to move, or I was going to call the police, and eventually she moved. I called my friend Eric, who I had worked with before at another company and who lived like half an hour away, and asked him if I could stay with him for a few days while I figured things out. He told me yes, without asking for details. "Just come whenever you want. I have the guest room free." I finished packing. Jessica kept crying and saying to forgive her, that she was going to change, that she was going to be the best wife, basically the whole classic script. As I was walking out the door, she yelled at me, "If you leave now, I'm going to tell everyone that you're the problem, that you abused me, that you're the bad guy in this story." And I just said, "Do whatever you want, Jessica," and left. That night at Eric's house was one of the weirdest of my life. He offered me beer, and we sat in his living room and I told him everything, showing him the recording and all. He just shook his head and said, "Man, I'm so sorry, but at least you found out who she really is before having kids or something." He was right, I guess, because we had been talking about starting to try for babies next year, and now I realize it would have been a total disaster. My phone wouldn't stop ringing with calls and messages from Jessica, alternating between, "Please come back," and "You're a coward," and "I hate you," and back to, "I love you. I'm sorry." Eventually, I put it on silent because I couldn't take it anymore. The next day, I hired a divorce lawyer that a cousin of mine who had divorced a few years ago recommended. The lawyer, whose name was Richard, listened to my story, reviewed the recording, and told me I had a very solid case, and that Jessica basically had nothing, especially since everything was in my name and I was the only one working. He told me he was going to do the paperwork and serve her as soon as possible. He also advised me not to go back to the apartment alone, that if I needed more of my things to ask for police escort or at least take a witness, because in these cases, people can go crazy. Like a week passed, and Jessica started her smear campaign just like she had threatened. She told my in-laws that I had cheated on her first and that I left her with nothing. She told our mutual friends that I was controlling and abusive. Literally invented a whole alternative story. Some friends called me for my version of events. I sent them the recording, and they went quiet and then supported me. Others simply decided to believe her without asking me. And honestly, that hurt, but it also showed me who my real friends were, you know? When she finally got the divorce papers, she completely lost it. She went to the bank, and although I had removed her access to the main accounts, there was a small joint account we used for household expenses that had like $3,000, and she emptied that account completely. And then, and this is what I still can't believe, she went to the apartment and literally threw all my remaining stuff off the balcony. We're on the third floor, and she threw my Xbox, my personal laptop, clothes, books, photos, everything. The neighbors called the police because they thought someone was moving in a very aggressive way or something. When the police arrived, Jessica told them I had hit her and threatened her, and that she had acted in self-defense by destroying my things to protect herself. Luckily, the building has security cameras in the hallways and in the parking area, and I hadn't been there in over a week, so her story fell apart immediately. The officers told her she could face charges for destruction of property and making a false report, but I decided not to proceed with that because I just wanted to end everything as quickly as possible and move on with my life. I did tell my lawyer, and he used all that to strengthen my case. Here comes the kind of ironic part of this whole situation. Like 2 weeks after all the drama with the papers and the destruction of my things, I received a message on LinkedIn from Adam, the affair guy. At first I thought it was going to be something aggressive or I don't know what, but the message said, "Hey, I know this is weird, but I need to talk to you about Jessica. I have information I think you should know for your divorce case." I responded and we agreed to meet for coffee, and when I arrived, he was there. Still well-dressed and everything, but he looked kind of uncomfortable and even regretful. He told me that after the confrontation in the parking lot, he had blocked Jessica, but she kept finding ways to contact him with different numbers and fake social media profiles. She basically started stalking him, telling him she was going to say he had raped her if he didn't help her get money from me, threatening him with ruining his reputation at work. He had saved all the messages, all the recordings of calls where she threatened him, and he gave them to me saying, "Use this however you need." She's not a good person, and I was an idiot for believing her. He also confessed that she had told him we had been separated for months, that I was violent and controlling, and that the divorce was already in process, so he thought he was just dating someone who was in the middle of a difficult separation. When he found out it was all a lie, he felt used and manipulated, and honestly, I even felt a little sorry for him. Although I also thought, well, like, you were seeing a married woman supposedly in the process of divorce. You weren't completely innocent either. My lawyer almost got happy when I showed him all the new evidence Adam had given me. He told me that with all this, Jessica had absolutely no chance of getting alimony or a favorable division of assets, especially because it was clear she had been the unfaithful one, the liar, and the one who tried to extort third parties. The divorce process ended up being faster than I expected, like 3 months total, and the judge basically ruled in my favor on everything. She got nothing except her clothes and personal effects, and she even had to get a job because obviously I wasn't going to keep supporting her. It's been 4 months since I heard that call that didn't hang up properly, and now I'm in a new apartment. Smaller, but it's mine and it's peaceful. I changed my phone number because Jessica kept trying to contact me with messages alternating between hate and nostalgia. The last time I heard about her through mutual friends. She's living with her mom and working at a retail store again, basically back where she started. I know there are people who think I was too harsh with her, that I should have given her a second chance or at least tried couples therapy. But the truth is that the moment I heard that conversation, something inside me broke permanently. You know? It wasn't just the physical cheating. It was the lies, the manipulation, the ease with which she talked badly about me with that guy, the future plans she was making without caring how it affected me. Sometimes, I still get moments where I wonder if any of what she said was true, if I really was a bad husband, if I didn't pay enough attention, if I worked too much. My therapist, because, yeah, I started therapy after all this, tells me those are normal thoughts, but I shouldn't let them consume me. That even if I wasn't perfect, and nobody is, that didn't justify what she did or the decisions she made. She tells me she chose to cheat instead of communicate, chose to lie instead of being honest about her needs or dissatisfactions, and those were her choices, not mine. The other day I was organizing some boxes of things. I finally got the courage to unpack completely, and I found a photo from our wedding. We looked so happy, so full of hope about the future, and I felt a weird sadness, not for her specifically, but for the version of me that believed in that future, that trusted another person completely. I don't know if I'll ever trust like that again, or if I want to. But I guess that's something I'm going to have to figure out with time. Brandon at work has been amazing. He never pressured me to tell details, but was always there when I needed to talk or just distract myself with work. Eric let me stay at his house those first weeks without making me feel like a burden, and that's something I'll never forget. They're the kind of friends you discover are worth gold when your life is falling apart. My family also supported me, although my mom at first tried to get me to forgive and forget, because she comes from a generation where getting divorced was like the worst sin possible. But eventually she understood there was no going back. What surprises me most about all this, looking at it now with some distance, is how quickly a life can completely change. A phone call that didn't hang up properly, 47 minutes of recording, and everything I had worked for in my marriage just evaporated. But also, and I know it sounds kind of cliche to say it, but there's a part of me that's grateful it happened when it happened, and not 5 years later with 2 kids involved or after buying a house together or something more permanent and complicated to undo. Now my days are simpler, calmer. I work. I go to the gym that I started going to keep myself busy and healthy. I see my friends when I can. I play video games without feeling guilty about not paying attention to anyone. It's weird being alone after 5 years of being with someone, of living with someone, of basing your routine around another person, but it's not necessarily bad. It's different, and I'm learning to be okay with different. There are moments of loneliness, obviously, but there's also a peace I hadn't had in a long time, a peace I hadn't realized I had lost until I got it back. People ask me if I hate her, and honestly, I don't know what to answer. There are days where I do feel rage, when I think about all the time I wasted, the lies, the betrayal. But there are other days where I simply feel indifference, like she's a person I met a long time ago in another life. I think that's progress, right? Going from intense pain to indifference, although I still haven't reached forgiveness, and maybe I never will. And that's okay too. The only thing I know for sure is that I learned to listen to my instincts. Those signals I ignored, the subtle changes in her behavior that I dismissed as nothing important, my intuition trying to tell me something wasn't right, all of that I'm going to pay attention to in the future. And if I'm ever in a serious relationship, again, which right now isn't even remotely in my plans, I'm going to make sure there's real communication, real honesty, real respect, because those are the foundations, and without those foundations, there's nothing worth building. I'm 27 years old. I'm divorced. I live alone in a 1-bedroom apartment, and I'm okay with that. It's not the life I imagined a year ago, but it's my life, and it's real, and it's honest, and that's worth more than any pretty illusion built on lies. Sometimes people tell me I'm too young to be so cynical about love, but I don't think it's cynicism. I think it's realism. It's having learned a very hard lesson very quickly about who you are when you think nobody's watching, and Jessica showed exactly who she was when she thought I couldn't hear her.